Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to yet another 2-Bit podcast. It is Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. I hope all of you guys are doing awesome today, and let's go ahead and get right into it. So, what have we been playing, guys? For me, it's been a shit ton of Paradox games. I have been playing Imperator Rome, played the shit out of that, and then decided to move on to the next age out of the classical era and into the medieval era, Dark Ages / medieval era with Crusader Kings 2. And I was playing a little bit of that, and then I noticed I was ignoring my consoles. So I got on my Xbox to play some games, and wouldn't you know it, I decided to play Stellaris Console Edition because I hadn't played it in forever because I just hated the UI. It wasn't very intuitive, and hey, wouldn't you know, they fixed it. So I was playing that, enjoying it a little bit, but kind of still wanting the PC version because of mods and console commands. It just makes the game a lot more interesting. You can play like you can start a game and play it, and that is fine, but then after a while of playing that game, you kind of just want to fiddle around and have some fun with either mods or, like I said, console commands. And that's console commands are in the game. They're just locked for some reason. Don't know why, but they're locked. Also, keyboard and mouse support, but at that point, they'd be like, why don't you get it on PC? Well, at the time, I didn't have a decent PC to run a game, so I got the console edition. And so, yeah, keyboard and mouse support would be great. Surviving Mars is a Paradox game. They got mod support on Xbox now, and they have mouse and keyboard support too. So come on, give us some love on Stellaris. That's all I'm gonna say about that. And yeah, that is what I've been playing. You guys, let me know in the comment section below what you've been playing. Oh man, moving on to some video game news. Some of this news dropped about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago. But as you guys saw, I released a special 2-Bit podcast last week doing franchise talk. Or was it last week? I think it might have been longer than last week now that I think about it. Anyway, at some point I released recently a special 2-Bit podcast. And of course, you guys have seen I have released new reviews, and so yeah, it's been a little busy here on the 2-Bit channel. So some of the news I'm going to be going over is a bit old. It's news I read and saw like 2 weeks ago, but I kept it because I had a little bit of an opinion on it. And so we'll start off with Quantic Dream. Apparently they're making a Star Wars game. Now, Quantic Dream, they did Indigo Prophecy, they did Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, I believe. They did that one. Detroit Become Human. And their games are essentially a choose-your-own-adventure book, but done digitally. And it's very linear. And I actually enjoy their games to some extent. I will say that, Detroit Become Human, they finally kind of figured out how to do it, and I never beat Heavy Rain, but I can tell you with Indigo Prophecy, actually Heavy Rain, I got like near the end, but I just stopped playing it near the end because they have a problem. They'll start out with like this great story, and by the time you get midway through to the end, it's just that they lose you. They just can't, like, they do some crazy shit, or it just gets boring. Like with Indigo Prophecy, robots and freaking extra dimensional shit. It is weird. It's weird. They come out with a nice grounded, like, straightforward story at the beginning, and then you go down this rabbit hole, and then it's like, I don't even care about the story anymore. That's kind of the gist of what they do. Detroit Become Human was the first one of their games I played where that didn't happen. It was they kept it grounded, so I enjoyed that one. And so they are making a Star Wars game, so I would be interested to see how this turns out. I mean, certainly it can't be any worse than the other Star Wars games we've got in the past few years. The only one that was great really was Fallen Order. That was awesome. But, the Battlefronts, not really. the Squadrons and all that. That one was okay. But EA has really not been that great with the Star Wars franchise. So I say let's welcome them. Let's see what they can do. I know we're getting a Knights of the Old Republic remake, so that's looking up. These guys are working on something, so it looks like it might be looking up this decade for Star Wars games. Because I can tell you, the last decade, when EA got to have their finger in the pie of Star Wars games, it was not great. It was not the best that series has been in video games. So yeah, moving on to the next topic. So speaking of crappy big video game companies, Activision Blizzard, they've been in trouble recently with how they treat their employees. They've even been sued, and it looks like they are settling out of court. Yes, I know I'm late on this, but I just wanted to talk about it briefly. The U.S. Employment Opportunity Commission and Activision Blizzard have settled a lawsuit over the games company's allegedly pervasive sexual harassment and discrimination. The news follows an EEOC suit filed Monday in California court that was based on a 3-year investigation, including cooperation from the game's publisher. As part of the settlement, Activision Blizzard will create an $18 million fund to compensate employees who claim damages. So, don't need to read more than that, because Activision Blizzard, you guys suck. And if you ask me, it should be more. I actually wish they would have been taken to court and the full extent of the law would have been brought down on them. But unfortunately, we live in America where companies can settle out of court and they don't have to get their names dragged through the mud and have that whole process go forward. But at least I guess this is something for the victims and how Activision has treated their people. And so I hope this helps them in some way, but I do wish we would get to a point where these companies would stop, because this is what they do. They settle out of court. And while, yes, we can all sit there and say, oh yeah, they were definitely guilty, otherwise they wouldn't have settled, they would have fought it. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know, I just feel like if they would have went to court, then a lot more things would have happened publicly, and it would have gone on, it would have, a lot more things would have come to light, where with this, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, we're sort of admitting that we did something wrong. Here's some money. Shut up. Here's some money. Let's just hush this thing up. That's how I feel. That's how it comes across to me. And, I wish that one day a company would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for how they treat their employees. And at least with these big corporations, it hasn't happened yet. But again, like I said, at least there was some sort of punishment for Activision Blizzard, but they are going to live to fight another day and continue to treat their people like crap and, just basically exploit their labor to make big budget games that they make massive profits over. So, yeah. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of that. So, we got some retro video game news. A group of ROM hackers are porting Street Fighter 2 over to the NES. I don't know what kind of voodoo and magic they are doing, but you can go online, you can look it up, Street Fighter 2 on the NES, and you will find clips of it. It's very impressive, but I wonder how that game would look once they fully get it over, because the NES is only 2 buttons. Like, I mean, shit, I remember with the Sega Genesis, controller, it was 3 buttons. I had to, badger my mom into taking me to Walmart to get the 6 button so I could play Mortal Kombat. And the NES would do even worse. So I don't know exactly how it would play, but it is still very impressive that they're taking this 16-bit game and somehow making it work on the NES. Now, granted, it isn't like an arcade perfect port or anything like that. It is definitely like an NES game. Like, he was playing Ryu, and there is no voice, voice work in this port. So it's, you're not hearing them yell out their attacks when they do it. And like when you throw your attacks out, it's like a Nintendo type of sound. It's definitely, you guys got to see it. It's pretty cool looking and pretty impressive. I can't wait till they're done, because I think I might go find that ROM hack and download it and try it out on an emulator just to see what it's like. And I thought that would be interesting. I know that I haven't discussed a whole lot of retro news, in recent, 3-4 years. But hey, this is interesting. So let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of this. And let me know if you guys know of any other interesting little ROM hacks where people have ported a certain game to an earlier generation of consoles. I love that type of stuff. I love it when they take a game and they figure out a way how to get it to work on a system that doesn't have as robust hardware. Like, for instance, the Switch is getting, Dying Light on there, and I believe that one is streaming, so they're finding more clever ways to do it nowadays, but back then, where with the older consoles, you didn't have streaming, so it's always interesting to see how they do it. Anyway, moving on. Kind of staying on some Nintendo news here. There was some more news that sprouted up just recently. I saw Bloomberg report it, and that was that the Switch 4K or the Switch Pro was a real thing, and that Nintendo had gotten, I guess, dev kits out there. It's been somewhat denied. One of the companies that said that, I guess, that was like rumored to have a dev kit was Zynga, which makes like mobile shit. I think I know they made like some love games or some shit on like Facebook years ago. So I could kind of believe that, yeah, they had an idea to make a Switch 4K whatever, but then with the chip shortages and whatnot and the pandemic, maybe they decided not to do it. I'm There's been just so much smoke on the Switch Pro or Switch 4K that I'm inclined to believe that there is something there. I don't think it's ready, though. I think, if anything, Nintendo's going to come out with an upgraded Switch, and when I say upgraded, more than the Switch OLED, probably next year or 2023. I do think it's time to do a serious upgrade, though. And if they want to continue getting actual ports to that system from multiplats, they're going to have to do something, because streaming isn't all the way there yet, so you can't fully rely on that. And the Switch OLED is not a significant upgrade. You got a better screen and better battery life. That's about it. Like, hardware-wise, it's not a significant upgrade. So I think we're going to be seeing more about a Switch Pro or a 4K Switch or a Switch, a new Nintendo Switch, how they had the new 3DS. We're going to be probably seeing something like that heading into the end of 2022 or 2023 at the earliest. And keeping on this beat of chip shortages and, certain consoles not being able to, well, that one isn't even made yet, but also certain other consoles not being able to be obtained, and that is Phil Spencer recently talked about how the shortages of Xbox Series X's and I guess S's is going to continue into 2022. I do remember at the end of 2021, some people were hopeful and thinking, hey, yeah, it's just the launch, the first probably 3 to 6 months, it's going to be hard to get a hold of these consoles, but by the time we get to the end of 2021, they'll be more numerous, and with the chip shortages and whatnot, it's still difficult. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's the chip shortages, which I'll get into that in just a second, And of course, you have the scalpers online, and with COVID and the limited amount of people that can be in a factory or in the shipping area, the social distancing and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of factors that are contributing to this. With the chip shortages, that's not going to be as big of a deal down the road. But I will say that like Nintendo was one of the smartest ones to get out early. There was already a trend of companies wanting to diversify, and so there's already a thing happening where companies are pulling their factories out of China and putting them in other places. And Nintendo was one of the first ones. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, 2020, I remember reading an article where Nintendo moved some of their factories over to, was it Taiwan? And as you can tell, out of all the, now granted the Switch is older hardware, so that's chipsets that are easier to get, but still, out of the big three, they've been able to get their shit on shelves a lot sooner and faster than Sony and Xbox. And I think that has to do with them getting their factories somewhere else that's more reliable, for one. And so I think even without the pandemic, this was going to happen. These factories, you just can't uproot them, put them somewhere, build a new one somewhere else, and then it instantly happens. It takes months, if not a year or more, to build the factory, and then you got to get people starting to produce, and that takes months to do. So I think in the long run we're going to be okay, but in the short term, I think the next few years we're going to continue to have this issue. Hopefully we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel by 23, 24. But I think we're probably going to continue within the next year at least with these chip shortages. And like I said again, that we are already on this trend. If you follow, anything outside of video games, you would see that things, that China's got some issues. Let's just say that China's got some demographic issues. They got some economic issues, and it is cheaper to build stuff in other countries now than it is in China. So there's a lot of factors there, and I think COVID just exacerbated it, but I think we were already going to be in a position, and this is what affects video games, we were already going to be in a position where companies were going to start pulling out of China and building somewhere else, and that just takes time to build that stuff up. And COVID just kind of exacerbated it and made it happen faster, and so now they're just trying to catch up. But yeah, with all that boring geopolitical science out of the way, let's move on to the final topic, and that is Capcom has announced that they want to make the PC their main platform. This is interesting because Capcom traditionally has been a console studio or a console publisher. I mean, they've made games for PC before. Everyone puts games on PC, but Capcom's focus has always been, let's release it on console, and then we'll release it on PC. And I think it just kind of shows you where things are headed. And besides, I would even say Sony and Nintendo. Sony's they're doing a little bit better by doing day and date with PC. In some aspects, but they're still kind of stretching it out so they can have their quote-unquote exclusives. But I think this is showing, like, with Microsoft especially, since they're now, like, PC and the Xbox, they're, day and date. When the game comes out on the Xbox, it's on the PC. And uniting both of those platforms. And basically, especially the PlayStation and the Xbox, they're essentially PCs anyway. And I think they see this going down the road, and I think long term they see that traditional home consoles, while they might still be around for the next 10 or 20 years, there's definitely going to be a blurred line between PC and consoles now. Microsoft has definitely done a great job of just knocking that wall down between the two, and you can't blame Capcom that if you look at any of the earnings reports from Microsoft and PlayStation and Nintendo, specifically, I remember back in let's go back to like 2018 and even 2019. I remember always looking at like the quarterly reports, and even though the PlayStation 4 was outselling the Xbox 2-1, and they were doing gangbusters, Sony was the best that they ever have been, and you would look at the earnings reports, and Microsoft would still be making damn near double profit than Sony was. And that was because Microsoft had eliminated that barrier between Xbox and PC. They were selling it on both, and they were making money on both. And I think that success has opened the eyes of a lot of developers out there where they're like, yeah, we can do both. And so that's what Capcom's doing, and they want to make that their main platform. So they will, I think Capcom's always going to be on consoles too, but I do think we're going to start seeing that. We already have seen it. I believe RE8 came out on PC as well as consoles at the same time. It's just, you're essentially leaving money on the table by not releasing your games on all platforms, including PC. Because honestly, the PC guys are never going to buy a console to play console games. Like, they might break down, maybe buy a PlayStation to have those PlayStation exclusives, or a lot of times they just buy the Nintendo console so they can have the Nintendo exclusives, and then they wait 5 years down the road to get a PlayStation game on the PC. And so yeah, and I would say it goes the other way too. There's a lot of people who play on console who are never going to be on PC. But I do think that again, like I said, specifically Microsoft, they've eliminated that barrier completely, and now the floodgates are open, and everyone wins because everyone gets to play games. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for me for this week. I hopefully will see you guys next week. I don't want to make any promises because that's the worst. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I'll definitely be here next week, and then some shit happens and I can't sit down to record like I did today. So anyway, guys, I hope the rest of your day, night, week, whatever time it is you're listening to, I hope it's awesome, and I will catch you guys in the next podcast. As always, stay safe and play on.